I had been working as a food delivery driver for about 6 months, mostly taking late-night shifts. It was easy money, and I liked the quiet of the empty streets. But one night, I got an order that changed everything. It came in at exactly 12 a.m., an order for a single meal from a restaurant I didn't recognize. The address was on the outskirts of town, far from any neighborhoods. I hesitated. The place didn't exist on my GPS. But the app confirmed the location, and the payout was too good to refuse. I picked up the order, a plain, unmarked bag, and started driving. The further I went, the more the city disappeared behind me. Streetlights became sparse, and soon, I was surrounded by nothing but dense woods. The house appeared out of nowhere. It was a massive, decaying mansion, its windows dark, the front door slightly ajar. My gut told me to turn back, but I had already accepted the order. I stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked under my weight. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Just as I was about to leave, a voice rasped from inside. "Come in." Every instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I pushed the door open. The house smelled of damp rot, the air thick with something foul. The hallway stretched into darkness, but a dim light flickered from a room at the end. I walked in. A long dining table sat in the center, covered in dust. Candles burned low, their wax dripping like blood. And then I saw them. Chairs pulled back as if people had just been sitting there. Plates filled with untouched food. But there were no people. I placed the bag on the table. "Hello?" I called. A soft knock came from inside the walls. I backed away. My breath came short, my pulse pounding. I turned to leave, but then I saw something that froze me in place. A second bag sat at the far end of the table. Identical to mine. Same restaurant. Same unmarked packaging. Slowly, I stepped closer. The receipt was still attached. My hands trembled as I read the date. The order had been placed exactly 1 year ago. A breath stirred the air behind me. I spun around. The chairs were no longer empty. Figures sat hunched at the table, their heads bowed, their skin gray and shriveled like dried leather. Their hands twitched, fingers tapping in unison. Then, one of them lifted its head. Its mouth stretched into a jagged grin. "Stay for dinner." I bolted. The front door slammed shut just as I reached it. I clawed at the knob, my screams swallowed by the house. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was the phone in my hand. A new order had just been placed. For one meal. For me. I don't remember what happened after the door closed. Just the sound of my own ragged breathing, the rhythmic tapping from the table, and the sickly scent of rotting food. When I woke up, I was still in the house. The candlelight had burned out, leaving only shadows that shifted unnaturally in the corners of the room. The figures at the table were gone. But I wasn't alone. Somewhere in the darkness, I could hear something breathing. I forced myself to move, inching toward the door. My phone was still clutched in my hand, the screen cracked but glowing faintly. The delivery app was still open. Order completed. My stomach dropped. Beneath that, a new notification blinked. New driver assigned. A chill ran through me. Slowly, my gaze drifted to the dining table. The bag I had delivered was open now. The food inside was untouched, but something else was there, my car keys. I snatched them up and ran. This time, the door didn't resist. It swung open, and I stumbled into the cold night air. My car was still where I left it, the engine running. I didn't question it. I just got in and sped away, gravel crunching beneath my tires. But as I drove, the road seemed longer, twisting in ways I didn't remember. The trees pressed in closer, their branches clawing at the car. My GPS was useless, nothing but static. Then my phone buzzed again. With shaking hands, I looked down. Another notification. "Your meal is on its way." I nearly veered off the road. My heart pounded as I looked in the rearview mirror, and my stomach turned to ice. A pair of glowing eyes stared at me from the back seat. A wide, jagged grin stretched in the darkness. And then, in a voice that was too close to my own, it whispered, "Delivery completed." I never believed in ghosts. Not really. That changed the night I moved into the old house on Blackwood Lane. It was a beautiful Victorian home, abandoned for years. The price was suspiciously low, but I ignored my doubts. I wanted a fresh start, and this house felt like the perfect place to begin again. The first few nights were uneventful. The house creaked in the wind, the pipes groaned, but nothing out of the ordinary. At least, not until I found the mirror. It was in the attic, covered by an old sheet. Something about it drew me in. The frame was ornate, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. When I pulled the sheet away, a chill ran through me. I never believed in ghosts. The glass wasn't normal. Not really. It was too dark. That changed the night I moved into the old house on Blackwood Lane. My reflection looked wrong. It was a beautiful Victorian home. The longer I gazed at it, the more uneasy I felt. The price was suspiciously low, but I ignored my doubts. Closed. I wanted a fresh start. My bedroom was empty, and this house felt like the perfect place to begin. I pulled the blankets tighter around me. The first few nights were uneventful. I told myself it was just my imagination. The house creaked in the wind. The pipes groaned. Then I heard it again, but nothing out of the ordinary. I sat up, not until I found the mirror. The sound wasn't coming. It was in the attic, covered by an old sheet. It was coming from the mirror. Something about telling myself I was being ridiculous. The frame was ornate. I got up, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. But as I turned away, I pulled the sheet away. I saw movement. Chill ran fabric. Something glass wasn't inside the glass. It was too dark, barely slept, staring into deep water. The house felt different. My reflection looked wrong. The air crackled. The longer I gazed at it, the more uneasy I felt. The next day, I tried to move the mirror, but it wouldn't budge. Soft. No matter how hard I pushed, my bedroom was empty, stayed rooted to the air was freezing. As if it belonged there. I pulled the blankets tighter around. I had a nightmare and told myself I was standing in front of my imagination, staring at my reflection. But then I heard it again. But it wasn't me. Come closer. Its smile was too wide, heart hammering. Its eyes too dark. The sound wasn't coming. Then it stepped forward. It was coming from the mirror. I woke up myself I was being ridiculous. I got up and covered it with a sheet. My reflection turned away, perfectly still. I saw movement, but I hadn't fabric. Something shifting inside the glass. Slowly, my reflection lifted its hand. The house pressed it against the glass. The air crackled with something unseen, something watching. I ran. I didn't stop until I tried to move the mirror, my breath coming in ragged gasps. No matter how hard I pushed, the house loomed behind me, rooted to the floor as if it belonged there. I never went back. That night, I had a nightmare. A week later, I was standing in front of the mirror, staring at the listing mentioned a beautiful antique, but it wasn't mirror left behind. Its smile was too wide, its eyes too dark. Someone else will find it. Then it stepped forward. When they do, out of the glass, inside will still be waiting. I woke up screaming. I tried to forget the house on Blackwood Lane. The sheet had slipped from the mirror. I told myself it had been a reflection of the light, perfectly still. Dream, but I had mind playing tricks on me. My breath caught, but deep down, I knew the truth. My reflection lifted. I had seen something impossible, pressed it against the glass, and it had seen me too. Let me out. Months passed. I whispered. I moved to a different city. I didn't stop until I was outside, but the feeling never left me. Coming in ragged, that creeping sensation that the house loomed behind me. Then one night, I got a call from an unknown number. A week later, first, the house was put back on the market. Then a faint listing mentioned a beautiful antique mirror left behind. My blood ran cold. I hung up, someone else telling myself it was a prank. And when they do, the thing nightmare started again. Waiting. In them, I tried to forget the house on Blackwood Lane. My reflection told myself it had been a trick of the light, a fever. It was outside, my mind watching tricks on me, smiling. But deep down, I knew the truth. I saw the house. I had seen something impossible. Sold, and it had seen me. Someone else had moved in. Months passed. I should have let it go. I moved to a different city, but I couldn't. Started fresh. The guilt, the fear, the feeling never left me. One night, creeping sensation, I found myself driving back to Blackwood Lane. Then one night, I just needed to see a call from an unknown number. The house looked the same. There was only something was different. Then a faint windows were dark, except for one, the attic. My blood flickering light. I hung shadow shift, telling myself it was a prank. I stepped out of my car, started heart hammering. In them, the front door was back in front of the mirror. I should have turned back. My reflection no longer waited behind inside, the glass. The air was thick. It was outside, heavy with something watching. The house was silent, except a week later, soft. I saw the house listed online. I followed the sound. Sold. My feet moving. Someone else had moved in. Up the stairs. I should have let it go. Down the hall, but I couldn't. To the attic door. The guilt, the fear, the tapping grew louder. Something was knocking. I found myself driving back to Blackwood Lane. I swallowed hard. I just needed to see it one last time. The mirror was uncovered. Its dark something was rippling like water. The windows were dark, the reflection, except for one, the attic, the new owners. A flickering light. Their faces, shadows shifting behind the glass. Their hands out of my car, the glass hammering inside. The front door was standing in front of the mirror. I should have turned back, reflection, but I didn't. It turned. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with something. Came back. The house was silent. I staggered back, but the attic door slammed shut. I followed the sound. My room went cold on their own. My reflection stepped forward, down the hall. I tried to run, but my legs tapping grew louder. The mirror surface stretched from the other side of the mirror. A void opening. I swallowed hard and pushed open the attic. I saw my own hands press. The mirror was uncovered. Of the mirror. Its dark surface. I tried to scream, but no sound. And in the reflection, I was trapped. The new owner. Outside my reflection, their faces were twisted. The thing that had taken my place. Their hands just pressed against the glass, smoothed its hair, and turned toward standing in front of the mirror. Then it walked away, and I was left behind, grinning that too wide smile. You came back, it whispered. I staggered back, but the attic door slammed shut behind me. The room went cold. My reflection stepped forward, reaching out. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The mirror's surface stretched and pulled, a void opening behind the glass. Then, I saw my own hands press against the inside of the mirror. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped. Outside my reflection, the thing that had taken my place, adjusted its collar, smoothed its hair, and turned toward the attic door. Then it walked away. and I was left behind. I had always been drawn to abandoned places. There was something hauntingly beautiful about forgotten ruins, places where time had stopped, leaving only echoes of the past. That's how I found myself standing before the Holloway Asylum, an old mental institution lost deep in the woods. The locals warned me against going inside. They spoke of strange noises, shadows moving in the windows, and people who went in but never came out. I laughed it off as superstition, convinced that fear had exaggerated the stories. Pushing open the rusted iron gates, I stepped onto the overgrown path leading to the asylum's entrance. The fog was thick, curling around my legs like ghostly fingers. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, something rotten. The asylum doors were ajar, as if waiting for me. I hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside. The silence was oppressive, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. My flashlight flickered as I swept its beam across the crumbling walls. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with empty doorways. The air was heavy, charged with an unseen presence. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, as though something else was walking just behind me. I turned a corner and froze. A wheelchair sat in the middle of the hallway, its wheels slowly turning, as if someone had just left it. The silence deepened, pressing against my ears. I wasn't alone. A whisper brushed against my ear, low, urgent, unintelligible. My breath hitched. I swung my flashlight wildly, but there was nothing. Just peeling wallpaper and broken furniture. I pushed forward, my pulse pounding. I had to see more. I had to know if the stories were true. Reaching the patient rooms, I peered inside one. The bed was overturned, rusty chains hanging from the walls. Then a sound. Soft at first, like a child crying. It came from further down the hall. My skin crawled, but I followed the noise, drawn to it like a moth to flame. The sobbing grew louder as I reached a door marked isolation. My fingers trembled as I pushed it open. The room was empty, save for a single chair facing the corner. The crying had stopped. Then a whisper, "You shouldn't be here." A cold breath tickled the back of my neck. My flashlight flickered again, then died. I was plunged into darkness. My heart slammed against my ribs as I fumbled with the light, my hands shaking. When it flickered back on, the chair was empty. But the door, I had left it open, and now it was closed. I turned, my breath catching. A figure stood in the corner, its face obscured by shadows. It twitched unnaturally, its head tilting too far to one side. Then it moved. A guttural growl filled the room as the figure lunged. I stumbled backward, slamming into the door. My hands scrabbled for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Cold fingers brushed my arm. My flashlight clattered to the ground, the beam illuminating a face, twisted, hollow-eyed, grinning. I screamed. The door suddenly gave way, and I tumbled into the hallway. The air was thick with whispers, voices pressing into my skull. I ran, my feet barely touching the ground, the asylum closing in around me. Bursting through the front doors, I didn't stop until I reached my car. I fumbled with the keys, my hands still trembling. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The asylum loomed in the fog, silent once more. But in the window I saw it, watching. And then it smiled,